Welcome to Snail Story, where every tale is a gentle journey of love, healing, and second chances. Sometimes, love doesn't begin with passion or fairy tale encounters. Sometimes it begins with a promise, a debt, or even an arrangement that neither side expected. But when two hearts are brave enough to face the truth, heal old wounds, and choose each other freely, that's when love becomes real. Today, Snail Story brings you a healing journey of two souls who find true happiness after overcoming pain, guilt, and destiny's twists. Let's begin the story. Before we start, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Snail Story loves seeing friends from all around the world. The hospital room was silent, with only the steady beeping of the heart monitor echoing in the air. Andrew Carter stood by the bedside, his gaze heavy as he watched his aging father struggle for his final breaths. Andrew... William Carter's frail voice broke the stillness, his trembling hand gripping his son's wrist. "Promise me? You'll marry her." Andrew frowned, his voice dropping low. "Father, you need to rest. Don't worry about these things." "No, Andrew. This is the last thing I ask of you. Find Emily Ross. One day you'll understand. Why?" Andrew tightened his grip on his father's hand, his heart aching. The name, Emily Ross. He had heard it mentioned briefly in his father's stories, but never paid much attention to it. "But I don't know anything about her, father." "Why her?" His father's tired eyes pleaded softly. "Because of a debt, and because she's the only one who can bring you happiness you've never known." Those words became his father's final wish before he closed his eyes forever. Weeks after the funeral, Andrew remained haunted by his father's dying request. As a man of logic who analyzed everything like a business negotiation, this vague pull gnawed at him in a way logic could not resolve. After days of inner turmoil, Andrew finally ordered an investigation. Emily Ross, occupation, librarian at Gracefield. Library. Orphaned at a young age, simple life, no ties to high society. The first time Andrew saw Emily at the library, every image he had conjured in his mind instantly vanished. There she was, gently arranging old books on the shelf, her soft brown hair falling lightly over her shoulders, a delicate yet composed face with eyes far more mature than her age would suggest. "Good afternoon," Andrew spoke, his deep voice firm yet warm. Emily turned, momentarily startled by the sight of the famous man standing before her. "May I help you, sir?" she asked politely. "I'm Andrew Carter," he said, getting straight to the point. "My father spoke of you often. Before he passed, he left me a final wish, that I marry you." Emily's eyes widened, as if she had just heard some kind of absurd joke. "Excuse me. Marry me?" "Yes." Unlike what she feared, Andrew showed no hint of forcefulness. His voice remained calm, his gaze held a certain respect. "Of course, the decision is entirely yours. I'm simply trying to honor my father's wish. If you refuse, I won't pressure you." Emily fell silent for a long while. This man, whom she only knew from business headlines, had suddenly appeared, making such a strange proposal. She shook her head gently. "Thank you, but I cannot marry someone I barely know, just because of an old promise." Andrew nodded, showing no anger. "I respect your decision." It seemed like that would be the end of it. But fate appeared to have different plans for them. A few days later, Emily received devastating news. Gracefield Library, where she had worked for years, was permanently closing after being bought out by a large real estate corporation. All employees, including her, were being let go. Worse yet, her landlord also delivered a notice terminating her lease. The entire building was being redeveloped into a luxury resort, also acquired by the same conglomerate. Her once simple, stable life crumbled within mere weeks. No job, no home, no family. In her panic, Emily accidentally discovered that the corporation behind these takeovers was none other than Carter Group, Andrew. That rainy afternoon, Emily stood in front of Carter Group's towering headquarters, her heart heavy. She wasn't there to beg, nor to blame. She simply needed to understand. Was this his doing? Unexpectedly, Andrew appeared just as she was about to leave. "Emily?" he called out, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" She bit her lip, trying to steady herself. "I just want to know, is everything happening to me lately somehow related to you?" Andrew paused briefly, then shook his head. "No, I had nothing to do with it. But I admit, Carter Group has recently expanded into that real estate district. I honestly didn't know you were among those affected." His voice was sincere, not evasive. After a moment of silence, Emily raised her gaze to meet his directly. "Then, if I had accepted your previous offer, would things have turned out differently?" Andrew answered softly. "Perhaps. But I would never use your misfortune to force you into marriage." Emily exhaled, her voice light as a breeze. "Either way, perhaps it's the only way I can regain some stability in my life. If your offer still stands, I accept." Andrew's gaze softened. He didn't seem joyful, nor triumphant like a man who had finally gotten what he wanted. Instead, his eyes reflected respect, mixed with a heaviness he couldn't quite explain. "Very well, but this time let me ensure that everything proceeds with nothing but respect, never pressure." And so their marriage began, not out of love, yet not entirely out of force. Neither of them knew then that destiny was quietly pulling them into a bond far deeper than either could imagine. The wedding took place quietly, so simple that without a few close attendees, no one would have believed this was the marriage of the head of Carter Group. No lavish gown, no multi-million-dollar diamond ring, no swarming media like typical high society weddings. There were only a few modest white flower arrangements and soft music playing throughout the courtyard of the old Carter estate. Emily stood next to Andrew beneath a maple tree in the front garden. Her ivory dress hugged her slender figure gracefully. Her heart raced as the officiant read the vows aloud. When it was his turn, Andrew looked deeply into her eyes. "I do." Emily inhaled deeply, steadying her voice. "I do." Simple wedding. Bands were exchanged, and their kiss was nothing more than a light, symbolic touch of their lips. All around them were watchful eyes, some curious, some doubtful, none of which escaped Emily's notice. She could clearly hear the whispers behind her. How surprising! A nobody marrying Andrew Carter. There's definitely something behind this. No dating, no public courtship, and suddenly married. How strange! Emily heard every word, but she remained silent, tightening her grip on the bouquet, quietly reminding herself, "I chose to step into this marriage. Stay strong." The first days inside the Carter mansion felt like living between two separate worlds. Every morning Andrew left the house before sunrise, burying himself in meetings, negotiations, and expansion strategies for the group. In the evenings he returned to a prepared dinner, but the meals were usually eaten in an awkward silence between just the two of them. Emily tried to initiate conversations, but Andrew seemed accustomed to living in his own world. His responses were short, polite, but distant. "How was work today?" "Fine. Would you like some tea? I made chamomile, the kind you like." "Thank you, but no need." The distance between them wasn't out of intentional coldness. It was as if Andrew himself was struggling with his own decision. He didn't want to pressure her, but he didn't know how to open up to a wife who had entered his life through an old promise. Emily spent most of her time reorganizing her new life. She walked the estate, familiarized herself with the staff, and rearranged the daily routines. Though the employees were polite, she knew their respect was only surface level. Some even showed subtle disdain. A small-town girl, now mistress of the Carter mansion. Emily quietly noted everything, but never responded. Instead, she learned to adapt. She asked Andrew for permission to enroll in short business and management courses at an entrepreneurial training center. When Andrew received the request, his response was brief. "If that's what you want, you don't need my permission for things like that." However, that evening, sitting alone in his office, Andrew found himself reviewing her academic file that his assistant had handed him. He was surprised to see that Emily had once earned a full university scholarship, only to withdraw early due to family hardships. He frowned slightly. Perhaps he had underestimated her. One evening, as autumn rain softly drizzled outside the window, Emily unexpectedly brought him a cup of warm tea. For the first time, Andrew didn't refuse. He looked up, his gaze resting on the book she was holding. "What are you reading?" Emily smiled gently. "The Psychology of Negotiation in Business. I thought, since I've stepped into your world, I should learn more." Andrew was slightly surprised, the corner of his mouth almost curving into a faint smile, though he maintained his usual composure. "You don't have to force yourself to do anything. I never expected you to change." Emily shook her head lightly. "But I want to be worthy. No matter how our marriage began, I don't want to be just a shadow in this house." For the first time since they'd lived under the same roof, Andrew stared at her for a long moment. In her eyes, there was no resentment, no ambition, no weakness, only quiet strength and dignity. He nodded softly. "Then, I wish you success." That night, as he sat alone by the window, Andrew gazed up at the rainy night sky, and he quietly admitted to himself, "Perhaps she is stronger than I ever imagined." Not long after the wedding, as Emily returned to the mansion, her phone suddenly rang. On the other end were familiar voices, her former colleagues from Gracefield Library. "Emily, we just wanted to call and thank you. Thank you for saving the library. The kids in the neighborhood are overjoyed. The library won't be shut down anymore." Emily was stunned, not quite understanding what was happening. Then more calls followed. This time they were from the residents of the old neighborhood where she used to live. Their voices were filled with excitement. The new developer changed the entire plan. Not only will the library stay, but they're also creating job opportunities for people like us. They're opening service centers for the luxury resort, and everyone's being trained and hired. Their cheerful voices, brimming with gratitude, filled Emily's heart with emotion. She smiled quietly, keeping to herself the part she never mentioned to anyone, that accepting Andrew's proposal was not only about securing her own stability, but also, deep down, her hope to somehow help those around her. From the staircase on the second floor, Andrew happened to overhear the entire conversation as he passed by. His eyes flickered with something new. This woman, she hadn't just thought of herself, she had never once brought it up to him, never asked for credit, never used it to justify her decision to marry him. Her silent strength, her quiet selflessness, stirred something within Andrew, part admiration, part something deeper he couldn't yet name. That evening at dinner, Emily looked up unexpectedly and asked, "I've been wondering, why did Carter Group suddenly change its entire real estate development plan? Preserving the library, creating jobs for local residents? That's not something major corporations usually do." Andrew paused briefly, his gaze softening. After a few moments, he replied, "I thought it was the right thing to do. Not every deal should be measured purely by profit." Emily studied him for a moment, her eyes softening. So, he wasn't entirely the cold, distant man she once assumed. Andrew Carter, the powerful CEO, could also consider the ordinary people behind every towering contract. Perhaps both of them were good people after all, just ones who had met too late. Emily's life in the Carter mansion gradually found its rhythm. Every morning she woke early, personally overseeing the household staff, making sure everything was neat and orderly before Andrew left for the office. She didn't want to be seen as a burden in his eyes, nor did she want to become a mere ornament in this lavish house. On weekends, when work allowed, Emily enrolled in soft skills workshops, studying economics, finance, and negotiation techniques. She understood that if she wished to survive in Andrew's world, she had to become stronger with each passing day. One late afternoon over the weekend, Andrew unexpectedly returned home earlier than usual. As he stepped into the living room, he caught sight of Emily sitting at a small desk, fully focused under the soft golden glow of the lamp. Scattered across the table were complex financial charts and economic reports, documents so detailed that even his senior assistants would sometimes furrow their brows. Andrew paused for a moment, silently observing. Beneath the light, Emily's beauty seemed to radiate quietly, not ostentatious, not showy, but deeply captivating in its own unique way. In that instant, for the first time, Andrew realized her presence in the mansion was no longer something he wished to avoid. Sensing his gaze, Emily looked up. Their eyes met briefly. "You're home early," she said with a gentle smile, her warm voice breaking the usual tension that hung between them. Andrew nodded slightly. "Work ended earlier than expected today." His eyes drifted across the materials on the table, his brow furrowing slightly. "You're studying all this?" Emily closed the book gently, her tone calm as always. "Yes. I thought if I wanted to understand you better, to understand the world you live in, I should start with the basics." Andrew studied her for a long moment. It had been a long time since anyone genuinely tried to understand his work. The women who had come and gone in his life mostly cared for the glittering surface of the Carter empire. None had ever asked how difficult or exhausting the job actually was. "You really want to understand it?" His voice grew softer, filled with an honesty rarely heard from him. Emily smiled, her eyes sparkling. "I want to understand you." Those 4 simple words sent a subtle jolt through Andrew's heart. Something fragile, something new, quietly stirred within him. A few days later, Andrew made a decision he had never previously considered. He invited Emily to accompany him to a major charity gala, an event he had never intended to bring his unfamiliar wife to. Emily stepped out of the car wearing a soft, elegant blue evening gown she had chosen herself. It wasn't an expensive designer label, but her simplicity and graceful aura drew many eyes. Whispers filled the air around them. Who is she? Andrew Carter's new wife, not from any distinguished family, though. She looks different from the women who usually cling to him. Andrew heard it all. But for the first time, he wasn't annoyed. Instead, he felt a quiet pride as he walked beside Emily, the only woman in his life who carried no ambition, only pure sincerity. During the event, as a business partner suddenly inquired about the new resort investment project, Andrew hadn't even spoken when Emily gently responded, drawing from the knowledge she had gathered on her own. The project targets high-end clients seeking peaceful, private experiences. The current luxury resort market is, after the charity gala, Emily Ross, the new wife of Andrew Carter, began appearing in various media outlets. Though not as flamboyant as other celebrity couples, her name was enough to draw the prying eyes of high society. Emily tried her best to maintain her quiet, simple life. She continued her studies, organized affairs within the mansion, and gradually became a capable and graceful wife in the eyes of the staff. Yet, one thing remained unchanged. Between her and Andrew, there was still a thin, invisible boundary. The distance had grown smaller, but neither of them had found the courage to fully cross it. However, just as Emily was beginning to find her footing in this new role, the first storm arrived. In high society, there were always those who couldn't bear to watch others obtain what they had long desired, and in Andrew's case, a powerful bachelor for years, Emily's sudden appearance became a thorn in the side of many women, especially Miranda Hale. Miranda was the daughter of a major real estate family and had been informally matched with Andrew several times through both families. Though politely rejected, she had never given up hope of becoming Mrs. Carter. Andrew's unexpected marriage to a nameless woman like Emily ignited the suppressed fury Miranda had kept hidden for so long. She began digging into Emily's past, leaving no detail unexamined. A week later, Carter Group hosted its Autumn Investor Networking Gala. This was the first time Emily officially attended such a grand event by Andrew's side as Mrs. Carter. All eyes shifted toward them the moment they entered. Emily maintained, her graceful smile skillfully greeting important financial figures. Andrew quietly observed his wife. He noticed how much more poised she had become under the scrutiny of judgmental stares. However, as the evening grew more intimate, Miranda approached, a glass of wine swirling in her hand, her smile sharp and insincere. "Oh, Emily, how unexpected to see you here," Miranda began, her sweet voice laced with underlying malice. "I heard you used to work at a library, didn't you? Quite a remarkable leap in just a few months." "Very impressive." Emily held her polite smile, replying calmly, "Thank you for the compliment. Yes, everything has happened rather unexpectedly, but I've done my best to adapt every day." Miranda narrowed her eyes, clearly searching for a crack in Emily's composure. "Not many people are smart enough to rise in this circle so quickly. And I heard, your old neighborhood was acquired by Carter Group, wasn't it? Outsiders might easily think you leveraged a personal connection." The surrounding atmosphere tensed. Some eyes began to turn toward them, whispers spreading through the room. Andrew, standing beside them, grew visibly colder. Emily kept her gentle smile, but her voice turned sharper and more resolute. "Life is full of coincidences, Miranda, but rather than speculate, perhaps people should judge others based on how they conduct themselves and how hard they work every day." Her sharp reply momentarily stunned Miranda. Before she could respond, Andrew spoke, his voice steady but commanding. "Miranda, this is an investor event, not a place for personal gossip. I expect all our guests to behave appropriately." His icy gaze left Miranda no choice but to back off awkwardly, though her resentment only grew stronger inside. That night, after returning to the mansion, Andrew unexpectedly spoke as they entered the living room. "You handled tonight's situation very well," he said, his voice softer than usual. Emily turned to him, offering a slightly weary smile. "I was just trying to protect myself. After all, I know exactly what kind of stares I'm living under." Andrew stared at her for a long moment. A strange feeling surged within him, part admiration, part heartache. This woman was quietly fighting each day in a world he had unknowingly thrown her into. "I'm sorry," Andrew said gently, "for making you face all of this." Emily shook her head, her eyes shining with quiet determination. "I chose to enter this marriage. All I ask is that you never see me as some arrangement." For the first time, Andrew was left without an answer, but within him, the feelings he had kept locked away for so long were beginning to stir. In the days following the gala, Emily maintained her usual quiet routine, but something inside her had shifted. She no longer felt like a complete outsider in the Grand Carter mansion. Though Andrew's gaze remained at times unreadable, his silence no longer carried indifference. Yet just as she was beginning to open her heart, fate once again forced her to confront a past she thought had long been buried. That afternoon, while reorganizing the old study in the mansion, once William Carter's private library, Emily unexpectedly discovered a small wooden box tucked behind a shelf. It was locked with an old brass latch. Curious, she brought it downstairs and asked the butler about it. The butler furrowed his brows slightly and replied, "That box belonged to Mr. William. Before he passed, he instructed me never to open it unless Mr. Andrew or his heir found it." Emily hesitated for a moment, but finally decided to bring the box into her room. That evening, when Andrew returned, she placed it on the table between them. "I found this in your father's old library." Andrew stiffened slightly. He recognized it instantly. The box his father had always kept nearby, but never opened in front of anyone. After a brief pause, Andrew pulled a key from his desk drawer and unlocked it. Inside were handwritten letters, old photographs, and a set of documents. As Andrew picked them up, his expression gradually darkened. Emily sat quietly, watching from across the table. One of the letters was written in William Carter's familiar handwriting, addressed directly to his son. "Andrew, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. There is something that has long weighed on me. Years ago, I was indebted to a man named Benjamin Ross, Emily's father. During a hydroelectric plant accident, he saved my life. But due to safety negligence under our company's responsibility, Benjamin died several weeks later from complications caused by that incident. I couldn't make the matter public because of the company's reputation, but I never forgot the debt I owed. Emily became an orphan because of Carter Group's indirect fault. I cannot change the past, but I hope you can offer her a different life, as our way to atone." Andrew gripped the letter tightly, his eyes filled with turbulent emotion. As for Emily, she was frozen. All she had ever known about her father's death was that it was a work accident. She had no idea that the Carter family had been directly involved in the tragedy. The room fell into heavy silence. Finally, Emily softly spoke. "So, the reason you married me wasn't just a promise, but out of guilt?" Andrew looked at her, his gaze heavy. "I didn't know. I truly didn't know what my father had kept from me. When he asked me to find you, I thought it was merely a dying wish. I never intended to use you as a means of easing the past." Emily pressed her lips together, her heart tightening. All of her efforts to adapt, to be worthy, to not trouble him, had ultimately been built on an unspoken pity. If your father hadn't left that request, you would have never thought of me, would you? Andrew stood up, stepping closer to her. "Emily, it's not that simple. I admit, at first I did it out of obligation, but not anymore." "Don't say another word." Emily backed away, her eyes turning red. "I need time to process everything. Please, allow me to leave the mansion for a while." Andrew opened his mouth as if to speak, but fell silent. He knew that, at this moment, any explanation would only echo faintly inside her already wounded heart. That night, Emily quietly packed a few belongings and left the Carter mansion. Light rain fell along the pathway, much like the afternoon when they first met. But this time, she wasn't leaving because she was forced to choose, but because her heart could no longer distinguish between truth and pity. She didn't know where she would go. All she knew was that if she stayed, she would no longer recognize what was genuine and what was sympathy. And Andrew, for the first time in his life, felt an emptiness creeping into every breath he took. He lost her. Not because of a contract, not because of conflict, but because of the very silence and coldness he had used to mask his true feelings. The autumn rain gently drizzled all night, as if trying to hold back Emily's steps as she left the Carter mansion. The small taxi quietly carried her past the grand iron gates she had once entered, with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. At that moment, only one thought filled Emily's heart. "I need to get out before I lose myself." The tiny apartment in her old neighborhood welcomed Emily with a simplicity she was once familiar with. No crystal chandeliers, no plush velvet carpets, no sound of high heels echoing through vast hallways, only old white-painted walls, a small dining table, and a single bed tucked by the window. She returned to work as a temporary librarian at a small community library, a place where no one knew she had once been Mrs. Carter in the world of the elite. Each day, she quietly arranged books, managed lending records for the locals, and chatted with children who loved reading just as she had when she was little. To everyone here, she was simply Miss Emily, a kind, diligent librarian. No one pried into her past. No one gossiped about her marriage. In truth, that very anonymity brought Emily more peace than any of the grand days she once spent in the mansion. Meanwhile, back at the Carter estate, Emily's absence left a void Andrew couldn't quite define. The once elegant dinners now had only him sitting across from an empty chair. The chamomile tea Emily used to prepare each night was gone. The meetings, the numbers, the business deals all continued, but they no longer brought him the satisfaction they once had. Andrew realized how accustomed he had grown to Emily's presence. Her gentle gaze, her quiet resilience, her patient smiles that he once failed to truly appreciate. She no longer needed him, and for the first time, he found himself powerless in the very world he had always controlled. A few weeks later, the butler quietly handed Andrew an envelope. "Sir, I thought you should see this." Inside were photographs of Emily at the small, suburban library. She was reading to a group of children, her gentle smile glowing softly under the warm yellow lights. Beneath each photo were brief notes from the private security team Andrew had secretly assigned to watch over her. Not to control her, but out of concern. "She's doing fine," the butler said softly. "But she seems very lonely." Andrew stared at the photos for a long time. Suddenly, a surge of regret washed over him, stronger than ever. He murmured to himself, "If only I'd had the courage to be honest sooner. Maybe you wouldn't have left." But the storm had not yet passed. While Andrew drowned in remorse, rumors of the Carters' quiet separation spread throughout high society. Some tabloids even published headlines about the calculating marriage of the orphaned librarian. What made it worse was that Miranda was behind all the rumors. She had not abandoned her ambition to claim the position Emily once held. That evening, for the first time in years, Andrew no longer sat in his office staring at numbers. He stood on the balcony beneath a gloomy night sky, overwhelmed with torment, and for the first time, he finally admitted to himself, "I love you, Emily." For years in the business world, Andrew Carter had always been the one in control. In every deal, every negotiation, he was the one setting the rules. But this time, when it came to his own feelings, he found himself clumsy and powerless. That morning, Andrew summoned his private security team. "I want you to stop simply monitoring her from a distance. Find a way to arrange a meeting between us." The team leader hesitated for a moment. "Sir, Miss Emily is living quite privately. She's declined all contact and even temporarily quit her librarian job after realizing someone was following her." Andrew clenched his fists. He knew Emily was always sensitive to being controlled. His silent attempts to protect her had only driven her further away. Then find a lead through people she once knew. "I want to search for her myself." After days of searching, Andrew finally found a small lead. Emily had once volunteered at an orphanage on the outskirts of the city during her university years. The orphanage director, Mrs. Clara, was the only person still in touch with her. That afternoon, Andrew drove himself to the orphanage. No assistant, no security, no entourage. For the first time, he stepped into a humble place far removed from his usual world of power. Mrs. Clara, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes, greeted him with a warm yet cautious smile. "I knew you would come one day." She sighed gently. Andrew was surprised. "You know who I am." "Emily told me everything, but only told. She never once resented you." Andrew lightly tightened his grip on the teacup in his hand, a wave of guilt rising within him. "Can you tell me where she is?" Mrs. Clara looked straight into his eyes, as if weighing her answer carefully. "Before I do, I need to ask you, are you here out of responsibility, out of pity, or because you truly love her?" Andrew raised his head. For the first time in many years, his voice grew hoarse. "Because I love her. Even if I realized it too late, I truly love Emily." Mrs. Clara remained silent for a moment. Finally, she placed a small slip of paper with an address into Andrew's hand. "She's there. But remember, if you hurt her again this time, you may never get a third chance." Andrew bowed deeply, his heart heavy with gratitude and determination. That evening, his car stopped in front of a small wooden house nestled beside the forest, hidden beneath vibrant autumn maple trees. Standing before the simple wooden door, Andrew felt his heart pounding faster than it ever had. He raised his hand to knock, but then hesitated, as if afraid that even the gentlest knock might cause the door to close forever. But before he could decide, the door quietly creaked open. Emily stood there. She was not surprised. Her gaze was calm, as if she had long known he would come. In that moment, all the words Andrew had carefully prepared dissolved. They looked at each other, no blame, no resentment, only the unspoken emotions buried deeply throughout their time apart. Finally, Andrew spoke, his voice softer than ever. "I came to bring you home." Emily pressed her lips together, her eyes brimming with tears. "I used to be so scared, so hurt, Andrew. But what pained me most wasn't the truth about the past. It was not knowing where I stood in your heart. Andrew stepped closer, his voice thick with emotion. "You are the only one in my heart. Emily, not because of a promise, not because of guilt. I love you, for the simplest of reasons. For your strength, your quiet resilience each day, and for everything I was too slow to recognize." Emily tightened her hands, warm tears rolling down her cheeks, and in that moment, for the first time since they married, Andrew wrapped his arms tightly around her, as if afraid that letting go might mean losing her once again. After that tight embrace beneath the small porch, the distance between them gradually dissolved. Emily no longer forced herself to maintain a facade of strength, while Andrew, for the first time, learned to let go of his pride and listen to the true emotions within his heart. That evening they sat together in the cozy little house, under the warm glow of the lamp, with only 2 cups of hot tea and the gentle sound of rain outside providing the background music. "I've been searching for you for weeks," Andrew softly began, his eyes fixed on the cup of tea in his hands, avoiding her gaze. Emily smiled faintly. "I know. Mrs. Clara told me. But I needed time. I needed to fully understand myself before facing you again." Andrew looked up, his gaze softer than ever before. "Emily, I'm sorry. If I had been honest from the start, if I hadn't been so slow to realize my own feelings, you wouldn't have had to endure so much pain." Emily shook her head gently, her voice light like the breeze. "In truth, some pain becomes an opportunity to see oneself more clearly. It was only by leaving that I realized how much I needed you. But I don't want our relationship to be built on guilt or pity." She paused for a moment, then looked into his eyes crystal clear. "I want to be loved, simply because I am me." Andrew reached out, taking her small hand in his, gripping it tightly for the first time as though afraid to lose her again. "And I want to love you, simply because you are Emily, not because of the past, not because of any debt." In the days that followed, Andrew stayed with her in that little house. Together, they experienced simple, ordinary moments they had never shared before, shopping for groceries, cooking dinner side by side, reading by the fireplace, or simply strolling under the vibrant autumn maples. For Andrew, it was the first time he felt what true happiness was, a kind of peace that didn't require billion-dollar deals or high-pressure negotiations. For Emily, it was the first time she saw the powerful man she once feared, now stripped of his cold exterior. Sincere, warm, even charmingly clumsy at times. That evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Andrew spoke unexpectedly. "I've made my decision, Emily." Emily tilted her head slightly, waiting. Andrew spoke slowly. "I'm going to make everything public. The truth about the accident all those years ago. Carter Group must take responsibility for what happened. I don't want that silence to continue weighing down our lives." Emily froze, her eyes filled with concern. "But what about the company's reputation? The shareholders? How will they react?" Andrew squeezed her hand, his voice more resolute than ever. "I've lived my whole life for reputation and profit, but I'm tired. If I lose everything yet still have you by my side, it will be worth it." His words caused Emily's heart to tremble softly. For the first time, she felt that his love was no longer tinted with compensation or guilt, but had become something pure, the honest choice of 2 souls finally finding each other. The next morning, as he prepared to leave for work, Andrew paused at the door, looking deeply into her eyes. "Wait for me. This time, I will make everything right. For us." Emily nodded gently, a soft smile blooming on her lips. "I trust you." And for the first time since she left the Carter mansion, Emily's heart was no longer filled with unease or anxiety. She knew that the next time she returned it would no longer be out of obligation or sacrifice, but as a true beginning, where 2 hearts had found each other after all the storms and trials. 2 weeks later, everything Andrew had promised, Emily finally began to come true. He held a public press conference, In front of the media and shareholders, Andrew officially acknowledged Carter Group's mistakes related to the accident years ago that had taken Emily's father's life. My family has owed the Ross family for many years. Today, I choose to face the truth. We will take full responsibility and provide compensation. In addition, we will establish a foundation to support families who have suffered from workplace accidents like Benjamin Ross once did. Carter Group will never build success on the silence of pain. The entire room fell silent. Some shareholders initially showed signs of concern, but seeing Andrew's resolute stance, they gradually recognized the long-term value of such transparency. After the press conference, the media was flooded with praise for Andrew's courage in confronting the truth. Rather than collapsing as many feared, Carter Group's reputation grew even stronger thanks to the integrity of its leader. But for Andrew, what mattered most wasn't reputation. It was that he could now return to Emily with a completely clean heart. That afternoon, Andrew drove himself back to the small cabin in the woods where Emily was waiting. She opened the door, smiling softly when she saw him standing there, no longer the powerful CEO, but simply the man she loved. "You're back," Emily whispered. Andrew nodded, stepping closer. His gaze was overflowing with emotions he had long kept hidden. "I've done everything that needed to be done. From now on, there is no longer any debt between our families. All that remains is love." Emily smiled, her eyes shimmering beneath the golden light of dusk. Andrew gently took her hand and, for the first time, knelt before the woman he had once lost. From his pocket, he pulled out a small ring, not the kind of dazzling jewelry the wealthy so often flaunted, but a simple, elegant platinum band. "The first time we came together because of a promise. But this time, I want to ask you with my heart alone. Emily Ross, will you marry me? Truly this time. With no contract, no obligation, no debt. Only our love." His voice trembled slightly, but his eyes remained steady and full of sincerity. Emily brought her hand to her mouth as tears of joy streamed uncontrollably down her cheeks. Throughout all the turbulent months, she had longed to hear these words, a proposal free of pressure, free of duty, where she was chosen simply because of who she was. She nodded through her tears. "I do." "Andrew." Andrew let out a quiet breath, his face glowing with a happiness he had never known before. He gently slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his embrace, holding her tightly. This time, it was truly complete. That night, beneath a sky full of stars, they sat together on the front porch, their fingers intertwined. Andrew whispered softly in her ear, "I once thought I had everything, but it was only with you that I learned what true fulfillment feels like." Emily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder as she gently replied, "Thank you for finding me, for loving me. This time, not for anyone else, but simply for yourself." And they sat there for a long time, allowing the gentle autumn breeze to witness the love that had finally endured and overcome all its bitter trials. 1 month later, Andrew and Emily's second wedding ceremony officially took place. This time, there were no curious glances, no doubtful whispers like at their first wedding. Instead, everyone present could clearly feel one undeniable truth. They had come together for love. The wedding was held in the historic garden of the Carter estate, the very place that had once witnessed their distance and cold silences, now overflowing with blooming flowers and joyful laughter. Emily wore a pure white wedding gown, simple yet elegant, just like her. Her soft brown hair flowed gently down her back, and in her hands she held a bouquet of white tulips, the flowers she had loved since childhood. At the end of the flower-strewn aisle, Andrew stood waiting, his eyes tender, as though holding an entire sky full of happiness. As Emily reached him, his hand reached out, firmly clasping hers, a silent vow of eternity. The officiant spoke with a solemn tone. "This time, I won't ask if you are ready, for everyone here has already witnessed your answer throughout these past months. Smiles spread among the guests as warmth filled the garden. Andrew gazed deeply into Emily's eyes and whispered, "I love you, today, tomorrow, and forever." Emily smiled back, her happy tears glistening. "I love you too. Thank you for always staying." Applause erupted as they exchanged their new wedding bands, and this time, the kiss they shared was no longer a forced ritual, but the union of two souls who had found each other after so many storms. After the wedding, their new life officially began. Emily continued pursuing the charity projects she had dreamed of for years. Together, she and Andrew established a scholarship fund named after her father, the Benjamin Ross Foundation, to support children who had grown up under circumstances like hers. As for Andrew, after everything that had happened, he gradually changed his way of managing the company. Carter Group was no longer merely a financial empire but a corporation built on a foundation of social responsibility. Each evening after work, Andrew was always the first to return home, sitting in their small room with Emily, reading, sipping tea. The simplest moments that had become the most precious. 1 year later, in their sunlit bedroom, Emily gently placed her hand on her belly, smiling joyfully. "Andrew, I have good news for you." Andrew froze for a moment, surprised, before his face lit up with pure happiness. He knelt down, placing his hand on her belly, his voice trembling with emotion. "You're pregnant?" Emily nodded, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Our child." Andrew pulled her into his embrace, tears falling from his eyes for the first time in his adult life. Thank you for everything." Beneath the clear blue sky in their warm little home, two people who once seemed to belong to entirely different worlds had finally found each other. Sometimes happiness comes late, but when it's genuine, it always arrives just in time. Snail Story believes that true love cannot be built on pity or obligation. It must be nurtured through respect, understanding, and mutual trust. There are mistakes in the past that cannot be erased, but we always have the choice to face them and make amends for what remains unfinished. And most importantly, happiness doesn't come from perfection at the very beginning, but from the effort of both people walking the journey together. No matter where you are or what you're going through, always believe that. Even delayed happiness is still complete, as long as it comes from a sincere heart. If you felt connected to today's story, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this story with your loved ones. Snail Story will return with many more healing stories to come.